Welcome back, guys, to a brand new spoiler review of the brand new episode of the After Party on Apple TV Plus. This is season 2, episode 3. Episode is called Travis, played by Paul Walter Hauser. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, ring the bell. I'm doing these breakdowns of the After Party weekly, as well as other TV show reviews, movie reviews, box office breakdown shows, and movie rankings. So please subscribe, ring the bell if you're new to the channel. Comment down below. Based on 3 of 10 episodes into the show, who do you think the killer or killers are on the show? Is this your favorite, least favorite episode of the season? Are you liking this season, or do you think like it's not as good as season 1? Let me know your spoiler thoughts in the comment section down below. Like the video, the thumbs up button. That's how you support this channel as well. And let's get into episode 3 of the After Party here in season 2. So we ended last week with Travis basically being one to be questioned next, obviously played by the highly entertaining Paul Walter Hauser, who is phenomenal in this episode. And he's a guy who's been one of the more underrated actors really working today, but obviously just got nominated for an Emmy for Blackbird, which was a very big deal for him in the show. He's been in things like I, Tonya, Black Klansman. Obviously got that leading role in Richard Jewell, which didn't really work out for him, or Clint Eastwood. But he's a terrific actor. He was one of my favorite parts of the new Cruella movie. So he's a very funny guy, and he definitely does that in this episode. So again, in this episode, Travis is he is the ex-boyfriend to Grace, who gets invited to the wedding. Now, I found this episode really fascinating. Now, it takes on this kind of 1900s noir type aesthetic to it, with the clothing, the black and white film, the way the dialogue is written. Now, this episode was also directed by Chris Miller, of course, one of the creators of the creator of the show. And this, again, was totally different from the one last week. And as this show continues on, it's amazing how many new ideas the show can do, because we didn't do this last season, or we kind of did like the Dickinson time thing last week. We hadn't done that in season 1. So I like the idea of the show continuing to feel fresh and unique. And I also think the character of Travis is a fascinating one, because he does actually feel like, out of all the characters, well, he might be over the top and might say some things that are very much on the nose and funny. It's a character that I think a lot of people can, I think, see in the real world. Travis is a guy, and I think this happens sadly in our country and the world, is that when murders happen, there are people from the outside of the situation who might have theories. And these theories, and depending on which people says these theories, and other people think they're deemed facts. And I found that this episode, well, obviously didn't hit that a lot, because again, Travis didn't know that his whole theory was that Edgar was going to fake his own death, and obviously something happened in the middle of that, which led to Edgar obviously not faking out that Edgar is actually dead. But I really do like the idea of, again, people who are on their computers, like Travis's character is. He's an online guy trying not to get scams and all these different things. There are people in his shoes in today's world where they think that they, even not being in the situation, not talking to any of the people, have conclusions on what people will do and how they're connected to a possible murder. And that happens in the real world. So I actually kind of liked the connectivity between Travis's character, who actually does feel like one of the more realistic people in the show, which I think will shock a lot of people, especially it shocked me in this episode. So at the same time as Travis is going through his own story, we get some new things with Zoe and Grace. They go investigate Hannah's thing, because we learned that it's not whatever it is on his suit that Edgar had in his pocket. It was a part of a typewriter, and only people who have typewriters is Hannah. So they go to Hannah. It was the G that was missing from Hannah's typewriter. Then they learn that all these plants around Hannah has like tent area, yurt, as they said, as Grace said, were poisonous. And obviously we'll get back to that in a second. So we get this whole story of Travis, and basically the bit of the story is that they learned this episode that Edgar not just was doing this whole cryptocurrency thing, but his 5 companies were funded into this cryptocurrency thing, making it that his cryptocurrency was worth a lot more than it actually is. And I think they did, even though I don't know anything about cryptocurrency, I think they did a good enough job for the people like me who have no idea what cryptocurrency is to explain what happened. And clearly something was going on the wrong side with Edgar for him to use his companies to just push himself up. Something you do see from a lot of billionaires, and you see it now in this episode as it pertains to Edgar. Now we get a lot of funny bits with the horse code, the Morse code. There were just so many funny bits with the investigation. Also, just the dialogue. Again, that's what's really clever about the show is obviously the story and having a different genre or way of telling a story every episode. But the dialogue always feels like it fits the time that they're doing it. And this is like a early 1900s noir. The quippy kind of that type of dialogue with all these metaphors really works. It really puts you in the time, but also not realizing that this is taking place in the present day. So I think they did a really good job executing that. And that's why this was good to have Danner work with Anik, because Anik actually knew what Travis was talking about, and Danner was just kind of just following along. But this then leads to kind of the big thing, obviously, which is Travis thinks that Edgar has like an airplane, whatever, driver's license on his thing. And he had all these names written down, Edgar did, which obviously Travis took a picture of. But Travis's conclusion was he thought Edgar was going to fake his own death and to leave Grace to go off somewhere and to continue to make money. Now, obviously, this did not happen. And we also learned that 30 minutes after Grace and Edgar went upstairs, that's when Edgar died. So, and then Travis basically stayed in place. He slept right outside of their door, and he woke up to all of the screaming of Edgar's death. So that then led to Zoe and Grace running in. Grace, obviously, this whole episode continues to think that she just thinks she'll be blamed for the murder, which is kind of what we saw in the first season with Anik, where Anik, the whole trepidation for him the whole season is that he just thought he was going to be the fall guy because he was the last person to see. We thought he was the last person to see Xavier alive. And we're kind of flipping that with Grace now, who's literally slept right next to the person who died in his sleep, basically. So that's very interesting. So then Zoe and Grace run in, and they're like, these plants are poisonous. And then the one plant that they pick out, I forget how they cut that down, but they get to the one plant which says hallucinations, because Edgar in that after party after the wedding said that everyone was devils, kind of out of the blue. And Anik thought that it could have been some hallucination. Of course, one of the plants was a hallucinating plant, and it says after 30 minutes you can hallucinate, and if it's too strong, that you die. So that leaves to Hannah to be the person who will be the next episode of the show. She was the person who I thought was the killer after the first 2 episodes. Now, again, these characters who are getting questioned early in the show does not mean that they're out of the woods. Again, Ben Schwartz's Jasper character was the 3rd episode of season 1, and he was the killer. So I'm not throwing Hannah out of the way, but they are making it very heavy-handed that Hannah could be involved. Now, that is turning me off of Hannah, and right now, after episodes 1 and 2, I said it would probably either be Grace and Hannah, or I think just Hannah. Is what I said after the first 2 episodes. I'll go back. Again, we're going to keep track of where I think throughout the episodes. Right now, though, I am going to land on Isabel, Edgar's mom, played by Elizabeth Perkins. I still feel like something is off with her and her relationship with her son. And obviously, we have not gotten her episode yet. So Hannah's episode is next week. At least based on IMDb, Isabel is and reports, Isabel is the 9th of the 10 episodes. So we'll see. But that's who I'm going to stick with right now. I'm not totally off the board with Hannah or even Grace being the killer, because Grace has a good alibi of not just her sister, but now her sister's boyfriend are all doing everything at every cost to avoid Grace being the one who gets arrested. That's a really good alibi to have for Grace. So we'll see. So those are my 3, I think, right now that I think potentially are the killers. I really don't think it's Travis. So that's my thoughts on episode 3 of season 2 of the After Party. I'll be back here next Tuesday night breaking down episode 4 of Hannah. We'll get to learn more about Hannah. So let me know your thoughts on this episode. What do you agree with my opinion? If you don't think that the mom is Edgar's mom, Isabel is the killer, let me know, who do you think is the killer after 3 episodes? I'll see you guys.